It was nearly closing time when I wandered into the oldest public library in Boston to escape a heavy thunderstorm. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. I simply wanted somewhere warm until the rain stopped. Most of the lights had already been turned off, and the building felt strangely empty despite being open. As I walked between rows of dusty shelves, an elderly librarian appeared from the shadows. She smiled politely, but her eyes looked worried. Before I could ask where the history section was, she quietly said, "If you borrow the book with no title, whatever you do, don't read the new chapter after midnight." I laughed, assuming she was joking, but she didn't smile back. She simply handed me an old library card and walked away without another word. Curiosity got the better of me. Hidden on the highest shelf in the oldest corner of the library was a thick black book with no title, no author's name, and no writing anywhere on its worn leather cover. It looked older than every other book around it. When I opened the first page, I found only a single handwritten sentence. "Every story inside is true, but only after you read it." A chill ran down my spine. The pages that followed contained dozens of short stories about ordinary people whose lives ended in strange, impossible ways. Every story stopped suddenly, as if the final chapter had been ripped out. When I looked up to ask the librarian about it, the front desk was empty. The library had become completely silent. I checked the book out just before closing. Oddly, the librarian never scanned it into the computer. She simply looked me in the eyes and whispered, "Bring it back before it finishes writing about you." Outside, the storm had somehow grown worse. By the time I reached my apartment, the power had flickered twice. I placed the mysterious book on my coffee table and tried to forget about it. Hours passed. I watched television, answered a few emails, and eventually glanced at the clock. 11:59 p.m. Without warning, the lights dimmed. The book slowly opened by itself. Its pages began turning one after another as though an invisible hand were flipping through them. The clock struck. The pages stopped moving. Where the final page had once been blank, fresh ink slowly appeared before my eyes, letter by letter, as if someone unseen was writing in real time. The new chapter had a title: "The Man Reading This Book." My heart pounded as the first sentence finished writing itself. At exactly 12:07 a.m., someone will knock on his apartment door, even though no one is standing outside. I slammed the book shut and pushed it across the coffee table as though it had burned my hands. My heart raced while I stared at the clock on the wall. 12:02 a.m. 5 minutes remained. I kept telling myself it had to be some elaborate trick, but the words I had just watched appear on the page felt terrifyingly real. I picked up my phone to distract myself, only to discover something impossible. Every search result about the old library had disappeared. Maps showed the building had been permanently closed for over 20 years after a mysterious fire. Yet, I had walked out of it only a few hours earlier. Before I could process that thought, my apartment lights flickered once, and the book slowly opened by itself again. The ink was moving. New sentences were being written while I watched. He will try to leave the apartment before 12:07 a.m., but he will discover that every hallway leads back to his own front door. I refused to believe it. I grabbed my keys, unlocked the apartment, and ran into the hallway. At first, everything looked normal. I hurried toward the elevator, but after only a few seconds I stopped in disbelief. I was standing right back in front of my own apartment. I turned and ran the opposite direction, passing the stairwell and the emergency exit. 30 seconds later, I arrived at my own front door again. Every hallway in the building had somehow become a circle. Panic surged through me. I rushed back inside and looked at the clock. 12:06 a.m. The chapter wasn't finished. More words slowly spread across the page like fresh black ink. He will think no one is outside the door. Then another sentence appeared beneath it. He will be wrong. Before I could read another word, 3 slow knocks echoed through the apartment. Knock, knock, knock. The sound was calm and deliberate, exactly as the book had predicted. I held my breath and looked through the peephole. The hallway was completely empty. No footsteps, no shadows, nothing. Relieved, I stepped away from the door, convinced it had to be some kind of prank. Then I noticed another line forming on the page without anyone touching it. The sentence completed itself, 1 letter at a time. He never looked at the ceiling. A faint scratching sound began moving slowly across the ceiling directly above my front door. The scratching grew louder with every passing second, dragging slowly across the ceiling until it stopped directly above my head. I backed away from the front door, unable to take my eyes off the ceiling. Then came a soft thud. Something had landed silently in the hallway outside. Against every instinct, I looked through the peephole again. The hallway was still empty, but when I glanced upward through the tiny fisheye lens, my blood froze. A pale woman with impossibly long black hair was clinging to the ceiling like a spider, her head twisted completely upside down. She wasn't looking at the hallway. She was staring directly through the peephole, into my eye. The moment our eyes met, she smiled. I stumbled backward, falling onto the floor. The book's pages began turning violently, as though caught in a powerful wind. More words appeared across the final chapter. He has seen the librarian. Below that, another sentence slowly formed. She collects unfinished stories. My hands trembled as I remembered the old woman who had checked out the book, her worried expression, her warning. Suddenly, a faded photograph slipped out from between the pages and landed beside me. It showed the same library exactly as I had visited it, except every table was occupied by silent readers. I looked closer and realized none of them were reading. They were trapped inside the pages of books lying open before them. One face in the photograph looked terrifyingly familiar. It was mine. The apartment temperature dropped so suddenly that I could see my breath. Books began falling from my shelves one by one, opening on the floor by themselves. Every page inside them was blank except for one sentence written in identical handwriting. Finish the chapter. The scratching returned, but this time it wasn't outside the apartment. It was inside the walls. It moved from room to room, circling me until it finally stopped behind the bookshelf beside the living room window. The bookshelf slowly pulled away from the wall on its own, revealing a narrow wooden door I had never seen before. Carved into the old wood were 4 words: "Author's room, do not enter." Before I could step away, the hidden door creaked open by itself. Beyond it wasn't another room. It was the same ancient library, stretching endlessly into darkness. Rows upon rows of shelves disappeared beyond what my eyes could see. Standing at the entrance was the elderly librarian. She wasn't smiling anymore. She looked exhausted, as if she hadn't slept in years. She raised one finger to her lips and whispered, "Run, before the book decides how your story ends." Then every light inside the endless library went out at once, and thousands of books slammed shut together, creating a deafening sound that echoed through the darkness. The librarian grabbed my arm and pulled me into the endless library just as something enormous rushed through the darkness behind her. The hidden door slammed shut, cutting off my apartment completely. I spun around, expecting to find the wall I had just stepped through, but it was gone. There was only another endless row of towering bookshelves stretching into the distance. Every shelf contained thousands of identical black books with no titles. The librarian's breathing was uneven. "This place doesn't collect books," she whispered. "It collects endings." She pointed toward the countless shelves surrounding us. "Every one of these books belongs to someone who ignored the warning." Before I could ask another question, One of the books flew off a shelf and landed at my feet. It opened by itself. The pages contained every moment of my life, from my childhood memories to the exact words I had spoken only minutes earlier. The writing continued across the final pages in real time. I watched the ink form another sentence. He believes he can escape. Then another. He doesn't realize he has already become part of the story. I slammed the book shut, but the words continued appearing through the leather cover, glowing faintly as though the pages no longer mattered. Around us, hundreds of other books began opening on their own. Voices filled the library, each one reading its own story aloud. Some begged for help, others screamed. None of the voices ever reached an ending. The librarian handed me an old fountain pen stained with black ink. "There is only one way to survive," she said. "You must write your own ending before the book does." My hands shook as I uncapped the pen and turned to the final blank page. Before I could write a single word, another sentence appeared by itself. "He is too late." The lights overhead flickered violently. Every book in the library snapped open at once. From between their pages, thousands of black ink-covered hands reached into the air, grabbing at the empty space around them. The shelves began collapsing one after another as the dark hands stretched toward me. I ran, clutching the book to my chest, while the librarian remained behind. She smiled sadly and whispered, "Every library needs someone to guard the stories." The darkness swallowed her before I could go back. I woke the next morning on a park bench across the street from where the library should have been. In its place stood an abandoned brick building with boarded-up windows and a rusted sign that read, "Closed since 2004. For a moment, I convinced myself the entire night had been a nightmare. Then I noticed the black book resting beside me. I opened it with trembling hands. Every page was blank except the last one. There, in fresh ink that still glistened in the morning sunlight, were the words, "The end, until someone else opens the book." Relieved, I threw the book into the nearby river and watched it sink beneath the water. I smiled for the first time in hours and walked away. That night, while scrolling through social media, I stopped at a photograph posted by a stranger. It showed the reading room of an old library somewhere in America. People were quietly reading at wooden tables. On the highest shelf, almost hidden in the shadows, sat a familiar black book with no title. The caption beneath the photo read, "Found this strange book today. It wasn't here yesterday."